Mr. Niles Niemuth. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Would you mind starting off telling us about your party?
Well, as I noted, the party is the Socialist Equality Party. We are a Trotskyist movement. We are affiliated with the International Committee of the Fourth International, and we are a political party fighting for the principles of socialism, and we are, fighting in the interests of the working class. We're the only political party that represents the interests of the working class, and that is fighting for socialism in the world today. Our party is an international party. As I noted, we have sections of the Socialist Equality Party all over the world, including in countries like Great Britain, Germany, Sri Lanka, Australia. So that gives you a sense of our party. We have a online publication. It's called the World Socialist website, and your listeners can reach that at wsws.org, and they can read our political analysis of current events, of history, of philosophy, science, we were here today campaigning, fighting to build a section of the Socialist Equality Party here in the Quad Cities. It's our perspective that we want to build sections of the Socialist Equality Party all over the country and all over the world.
And today you were talking about one topic in particular, war. Tell us about this, your party's interpretation of that. You pointed out and criticized Hillary Clinton regarding the no-fly zone. What is your party standing for in regards to international conflict?
Well, the question of war is a question that has gone unaddressed in these elections. Really in no serious way has the question of foreign policy come up, either in the debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, or in the debates in the primaries between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, or even in the Republican debates. The United States is a country that has been at war continuously for the last 15 years. And really, for the last 25 years, the United States has been waging war. We've seen, really since 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union. The American capitalists are seeking to assert their dominance all over the world. And the way in which they've done that is through war. We've seen repeated assaults on the country of Iraq. Just in the last 15 years, more than 1 million people were killed by the U.S. military, just in that country. We've seen conflicts. Of course, there's the occupation and invasion of Afghanistan, which is now in its 15th year. Thousands of U.S. soldiers remain there, engaged in combat. The United States has troops in Syria, in which it is primarily supporting Islamist militants in an effort to overthrow the Assad government. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in the course of that conflict just since 2011. I could go on and on. There's Libya, there's Somalia, there's Pakistan, and in every instance, it's the United States government and American imperialism that bears the ultimate responsibility for the deaths of millions of people and the displacement of millions more. And we're the only political tendency that's raising this issue in this election campaign.
So do you see the party as trying to pull back from a lot of these areas and try and stay within our borders? Not as isolationist, but definitely try and pull out?
We're definitely not an isolationist party, and neither are we oriented. We're not nationalists either. What we seek is to unite the working class all over the world. Workers in the United States, in the Middle East, in China, we all have the same interests. But there's a constant effort to divide us, whether it's through the promotion of nationalism, and workers themselves are used and pitted against each other in war. And we're opposed to that. We would call for the removal of all U.S. troops from the Middle East and from everywhere in the world that U.S. soldiers are stationed, which currently is almost every single country in the world.
It's interesting you bring up this division. After doing a little bit of research, your party is not the only socialist party running in this election. There's the Socialist Party USA, Social Workers Party. What is the difference between the SEP and these other parties?
Well, the Socialist Equality Party is the only genuine socialist party in the world. We are the only party that orients ourselves to the working class and fights for the interests of the working class, and we are the only party that builds itself within the working class. We identify all of these other groups that claim to be socialist as pseudo-left. That means that we say that they're fake left parties, that they posture as socialists or as anti-capitalist, as a means of trapping young people and workers and redirecting them into supporting capitalism and ultimately into supporting the Democratic Party. I think we saw the most explicit form of that in the campaign of Bernie Sanders, who called himself a democratic socialist. He called for a political revolution against the millionaires and billionaires. And millions of people supported that. 13 million people voted for him in the primaries. He won 23 states. But now he's telling everyone to vote for Hillary Clinton, who in fact herself is the embodiment of American imperialism and is the candidate of the millionaires and the billionaires. So that's the most explicit example. And these other groups like Socialist Alternative, which supported Bernie Sanders all the way in the primaries and through that supports the Democratic Party, or the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, who on their publication socialistworker.org publish articles on a daily basis in support of an escalation of the U.S. wars in the Middle East, in particularly in Syria, and in that way lend their support to American imperialism. And so it's very clear to us that they are not a genuine socialist party. SEP is the only genuine socialist party in the world.
And what was the SEP's stance regarding Bernie Sanders before he eventually had to drop out of the race?
Well, from the very beginning, we understood that the political purpose of his campaign was to take young people, many of them who are probably your listeners, and workers who have left-wing sentiments, who oppose war, who oppose social inequality, who are upset about the domination of Wall Street and the large banks over every aspect of their lives, and to funnel them back into the Democratic Party where that opposition could be dissipated. We had no illusions in Bernie Sanders. You can go to our website, it's wsws.org. You can look up our articles, what we wrote. In fact, we just published a pamphlet called the Experience of the Bernie Sanders Campaign, what the World Socialist website said. And you can see that from the very beginning, we were warning workers and students that what Bernie Sanders did in endorsing Hillary Clinton is exactly what he was going to do. We knew from the moment that he announced his campaign that was the political purpose of what he was doing.
As the SEP is generally a leftist a group, far left, how does the SEP consider that supporting Hillary Clinton, that while is not a socialist, is still left and is though better than the Republican nominee Donald Trump?
Well, Hillary Clinton is in no way left. She can't be considered as a left-wing candidate. She is, if elected, she will be the most right-wing president America has ever had in its history. She is a candidate who is committed to expanding the wars in the Middle East. She has committed herself to going to war against Russia and China. And she is committed to austerity here at home. She will wage ferociously a struggle against any demands by the working class for better wages, for better working conditions, for pensions and health care. You really, it's sort of offensive to even insinuate that Hillary Clinton is left.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
No. I'm not saying that you personally, but yeah, there are many people who say, well, she's the left-wing candidate, we have to support her. But there's nothing about the policies that she is promoting and the policies that she will pursue as president that have anything to do with left-wing politics.
Then what are the policies that the SEP and your presidential nominee, Mr. White, if I recall?
Jerry White.
What are the policies that you both are pushing?
Well, first and foremost, we call for the nationalization of the banks and all large corporations worth more than $20 billion. We called for the seizing of all the ill-gotten gains of the financial parasites that run the hedge funds on Wall Street. And we called for the working class to control that wealth and put it to use in their own interests. We believe that everyone has the right to a job, the right to health care, the right to a decent standard of living, the right to free and high quality public education, whether it's pre-K up through university, and that all of those can be guaranteed. I mean, there's never been more wealth created in this country and in the world than ever before. And yet you have 63 individuals in the world who control as much wealth as the bottom half of the world's population. That's 3 billion, 4 billion people, 6 to 63. There's immense wealth. They always say that there's no money. There's no money for public education. There's no money for better wages. There's no money for anything. And yet there's always money for war. They've poured trillions of dollars. In fact, one study recently noted that $5 trillion was spent over the last 15 years on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So clearly there are resources available. It's just a question of who's controlling them and how are they being marshaled. And we believe that it's the working class that should be in control of those resources. And that's why we're fighting for socialism. That's the way we're going to advance humanity, not just here in the United States, but all over the world.
It's interesting that you bring up the world and that you are a international group. Do you see that as an advantage over other parties that are currently running?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest advantage that we have. I mean, we orient ourselves not to backwards notions of nationalism, but we orient ourselves to the working class all over the world. And in fact, in our election campaign, we haven't just been having meetings and speaking to workers in the United States. Jerry has gone to Canada, had several meetings in Canada. We've gone to factories and spoken to workers at the factory gates and other workplaces. And we've addressed meetings in Germany and in Sri Lanka. That's our focus. Our focus is the world. And we say to American workers that, you have to reach out to your brothers and sisters in Canada and Mexico and China if there are going to be any improvements in your living conditions here. Because we're not going to be able to achieve socialism just in the United States. Even with as many people and as many resources as we have here, it's impossible. It has to be an international movement.
During this election, we did see the rise and fall of Bernie Sanders and his quote-unquote socialism. And some people displayed either fear or aggression towards having a socialist candidate. Do you feel that animosity is also directed towards your party, and how do you combat that?
Well, I think that increasingly we're seeing not animosity, but people are very open to the idea of socialism. And that, of course, found expression in the 13 million people that voted for Sanders and the many millions more who supported his candidacy. But he wasn't responsible for that. There are real developments in this country that are pushing people to the left. I mean, we've had a real experience over the last 15 years. You had the stolen election of 2000. You had the war in Iraq, which was waged on the basis of a lie, which continues. Then, of course, you had the election of Barack Obama in 2008, the candidate of hope and change. And we were told that because he's African American, he would be a transformative candidate. And of course, what we've seen is the expansion of the wars in the Middle East and a continued attack on the living standards of workers. And I think it's those experiences that are really opening people's eyes and making them amenable to the idea of socialism, the idea that they should be in control, that we should put an end to these wars, and that we're really the only ones that are going to be able to do it. The Democrats and the Republicans, they're not going to end the wars. They're not going to rein in Wall Street. We're going to have to do it through building a socialist movement, a genuine socialist movement of the working class and of young people. And that's the Socialist Equality Party. And every meeting we've had in this election campaign has been met very favorably. People are very engaged with political issues. They're very interested in socialism. And I think that the future for socialism in this country is very bright. We're very optimistic.
Then where do you see the party in the next 10, 15 years or so? Based on the previous presidential elections, they've met less than favorably.
Well, on the question of how many votes we get, we don't really gauge success or failure based on the number of votes we get. I mean, our intervention in the elections is always oriented towards making people aware of our political program and fighting to build our political movement. Politics for us is not an every 4-year or every 2-year thing. It's an everyday thing. Politics is something that affects everyone in their everyday lives, and people have to be aware of that. And we are building our party gaining members throughout the country. We've had meetings in places where we've never had meetings before. I did a meeting on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, which was met very favorably. So I think we've seen that the influence of the party is growing here in the United States and will continue to grow. It's my hope that over the next 10 to 15 years, if not sooner, we will develop a mass movement of the working class to oppose war, that millions of people will join our movement, and that we can finally establish a government in this country and all over the world that represents our interests and puts an end to these wars and the real danger of a third world war, which is very close on the horizon.
That's very chilling, I must admit.
Yes.
That is all the questions that I have for you. Thank you so much for coming in, Mr. Niemuth. This has been a fantastic experience. Once again, to everyone out there that you've been listening to WOG.FM, Radioactive.
Thank you.